Hello and welcome to Just the Watch. Today I'm really excited to be checking out a brand new watch from a brand new micro brand. We're going to be taking a look at the Erebus Origin. And the reason I'm so excited to check this watch out is because Erebus is backed by Jody from Just One More Watch. And Jody is one of my favorite watch reviewers on YouTube. He's been a huge inspiration for me and my channel, and I have watched so many of his videos where he has reviewed hundreds of watches and he has been moaning and niggling over every single one of them. And now he actually has the guts to put together his own watch and send it out to other reviewers for us to comment on. So is Jody going to be able to take all of his experience reviewing watches and critiquing watches to produce the ultimate affordable dive watch? Another thing that Jody is known for is his love of Lume on watches, so I want to know exactly how good is the Lume on the Erebus Origin. By the time this video is over, all of those questions will be answered, and if I've got my release timing right, you should still have time to be able to pick this watch up at its pre-order price of $299. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Origin from Erebus Watches. Hey guys, welcome back to Just The Watch. My name's Dave. I live in Japan. This is not Just One More Watch. My name is not Jody. I do not live in Australia. It seems like a lot of people get our channel names confused because they are kind of similar. That was not intentional. But one thing that Jody and I do have in common, other than our similar channel names, is that we both have a love of affordable watches. And so when he went out to create his first watch for Erebus, I think his goal was to go all out in creating the best value dive watch on the market. And on paper, there are a lot of amazing things crammed into this watch at this under $300 price point. You are, of course, getting a sapphire crystal, 200 meters of water resistance, and the rock-solid NH35 automatic movement inside of it. But in addition to that, you're also getting a fully lumed ceramic bezel, excellent lume all the way around, a solid bracelet with quick-release end links, and even more important, a tool-free micro-adjust clasp, and 6 layers of anti-reflective coating on the underside of the crystal. These are all features that I look for in a watch, and obviously Jody has gone out of his way to make sure that he checks every single one of those boxes in getting his first watch out there. And of course, he's also releasing this with a 2-year warranty, which is another thing he commonly complains about micro-brand watches, not having a long enough warranty for their first watch. But before we get into it, I need to let you guys know that Jody has promised to send me a free production unit of the watch after it's gone into production, which is why you saw the paid promotions flag at the beginning of this video. However, beyond that, I haven't received any compensation for this review, nor has Jody or anybody from Erebus Watches had any input into the content of this review. Now, we've already talked a little bit about the spec sheet and the price tag, and all of that is off to a very promising start. But the real question is it any good? Let's flip the camera and get into it. Starting off with the dimensions, we have a 41 millimeter case, 47 millimeter lug to lug, 20 millimeter lug openings, and 12.5 millimeters thick. These dimensions are pretty much perfect for almost any wrist size. 41 millimeters is kind of a medium-sized case, but within that moderate case size, they've gone with a very large dial without a rehaut or chapter ring. So the watch has the visual impact of a larger watch with the comfort and wearability of a moderate-sized one. And this is especially true with that 47 millimeter lug to lug. A lot of times you would find a longer watch, but he's gone with a more compact one here, which again, really is going to help this wear well on pretty much any wrist size. And the choice of going with 20 millimeter lug openings maximizes your strap options. So you're going to have a ton of different straps you can try out with this. If you already own a good collection of 20 millimeter straps, you can swap them on here immediately, or they're offering a strap pack where they have 3 selected straps, which are pretty basic, but they're kind of your great common go-to alternatives for a dive watch. But right off the bat, we have an extremely wearable watch that is very comfortable as well on the wrist. Inside this watch is powered by the Seiko NH35 automatic movement, which is your go-to movement for a watch in this price range. I know a lot of people seem to be tired of the NH35. I hear that comment a lot, but I think it is just the perfect movement for a watch in the $300 price range. It's reliable, relatively accurate, quiet on the wrist. It features hacking and hand winding and a date. If you want a watch with a fancier movement, then spend more money on it. But if you want a watch for around $300, the Seiko NH35 I think is the best choice. If a manufacturer is going to throw in a better movement than the NH35, you're going to have to cut corners somewhere else to recoup that cost. So I think this is the perfect choice for this watch because it allows them to throw in that ceramic bezel and that clasp with the tool-free push-button micro adjust and all of those other extras that they wanted to give you at this price range. So right off the bat, when it comes to specifications, I think you're getting an excellent value for your money here, which is one of their main goals in this watch. But just as important as offering a great value is giving you a good design. And that's often an area where brands can struggle, especially with their first watch if they don't have a design background. So let's kind of turn and focus on that and see how they did on the design front. And for starters, I think they did a really good job on the design. There's nothing groundbreaking about this design, but there's a clear purpose involved here. There's some nice little design flourishes, and crucially, there's no real big mistakes here that are going to distract you or turn you off from this watch. The design here is very much going for a tool watch, so we're getting very high legibility and not a lot of refinement or elegance here. They've got a very large, bold handset, utilitarian square and rectangular markers, and a design that is extremely high in contrast and low in reflectivity. There are no polished surfaces anywhere, not on the hands, not on the case, not on the markers. I think it's a very cool look. It's a very functional look that's very legible, but it is a very casual look. One of the things that people like about dive watches is that a lot of them do have a bit of a dressy flair, which makes them very versatile. You can get away with wearing them with a suit or to the beach. With this design, I think you're going to have a harder time dressing it up. It's probably going to be more suitable to casual occasions. And that's not a negative by any means. That's just the conscious design choice that they've gone with here. I think you can see some clear influences from other watches that have done similar things. The design philosophy reminds me of what you would see from some of Zinn's dive watches. And on the micro brand side, I think you'll find a lot of similarities to watches from Helm, but watches from Zinn cost like 10 times more than this, and watches from Helm are constantly out of stock. And I think Jody, being a watch reviewer, clearly knows this, and I suspect that's why they went with this design. It's a very good looking design that's in demand, great smart business decision here, and I think they pulled it off really well. I really like the symmetry of the 6 o'clock date, and I especially like that they included that truncated marker underneath the date so that there are no gaps when it's all loomed up in the dark. I also like that they went with a matching second hand that has a square tip on it, which perfectly lines up with the marker. So as it goes around the dial, it's going to kind of turn each of these square-shaped markers into a rectangle, and when it hits the major ones at 9 and 3, it's going to kind of fill in those. It's a really satisfying design cue. Taking a closer look at the dial, they've gone with a textured dial here, which has this kind of wet sand sort of look to it. It's a mostly matte finish, but there is a little bit of a shimmer to it, which you can see in some colors, particularly on the white dial. That especially comes out. There's a little bit of this silver tint to it. But even on the black dial, I think there's a little bit of a wet look to the texture of the dial, which is kind of cool. But for me personally, I'm not particularly drawn to this dial texture. This is something that I think is getting a little bit overdone. I kind of feel like it's become the go-to default option for anybody who's doing a micro brand that wants to do something other than a sunburst texture. And personally, I think it would have been cool to see a flat, untextured dial with a matte finish on it to really lean into that high contrast design. But that's largely going to come down to personal preference. That said, I love the dial color options that they've gone with. I love that they're giving you 8 different dial colors, and I think each color is just the perfect one for this dial design. I got sent the black, white, orange, and red, and I think each one of those really looks great. I really like the accent colors on the white dial and the black dial. On the white dial, you're getting orange accents with an orange tipped second hand and then orange markers on the minute track, and then that same orange color on the text on 20 ATM. While the black dial does the same thing, but uses red for the accents there. And the red looks surprisingly good. That really high contrast, pure white against the red is very visible, and it just has such a strong visual impact. It's probably not something that I personally could pull off, but I really like the way it turned out. Surrounding the dial is a loomed ceramic bezel insert, which features a fully indexed elapsed time scale. So very detailed time scale that makes it very easy to tell exactly how many minutes have elapsed since you set the timer. But with that full indexing and kind of slightly thinner font on the text on the bezel, it is going to make it a little bit harder to read. Maybe a problem if you're actually using it for timing dives, but I think for daily use, that extra indexing with the individual minutes being printed on there is a good option to go with. And the bezel action is really good and very easy to grip. The resistance is just the perfect amount, so you can very easily grab it and set it. It operates very smoothly with no backplay. The alignment seems to be a hair off on some of the prototypes that were sent in, but overall it's pretty good. And now's a good time to dive into the Lume on this watch. If you watch Jody's channel, you know that he really loves Lume on watches. He has a long-running series called Lume Wars where he pits different watches against each other to see which one has the best Lume. And so you know when he goes out to make his own watch that everybody's going to be expecting it to have great Lume. So the heat's kind of on here. Now, I kind of share Jody's passion for things that glow in the dark. And so I created a system for rating Lume in a kind of somewhat objective manner. I put every watch that I get in through a 1-hour time lapse on my camera. And then I'll take the picture 1 hour after the watch has been fully charged, and I'll bring it into Photoshop to analyze the brightness of the hands and the markers. Photoshop can give me the brightness values, and as long as I keep my testing consistent, I can get a pretty good comparison across different watches. I've weighted my scoring system around Seiko's entry-level dive watches because Seiko is known for having excellent Lume. So a score of 10 is equal to Seiko's entry-level dive watches like the Seiko Samurai. And arguably, you don't need anything stronger than that. But oh, do we want stronger Lume than that? So since Jody is launching this watch at under $300, I want to ask, does this watch have the best Lume of any watch under $300? And in that under $300 price range, two watches that really stand out are the Orient Baby Triton and the Seiko 5KX. So that's going to be his competition in this three-way mini Lume battle. And as this test goes, you can see it hangs in there really well against these other watches. At the end of 1 hour, it has a clear advantage over the Seiko 5KX. And while it's still clearly a step below the Orient Baby Triton, especially when you examine the markers, it performed really well, still beating that 10 benchmark with a score of 11, which is high enough to rank it within the top 20 brightest watches that I've tested. So great job there. All right, let's start to wrap this up by talking about the bracelet options here, and they have two bracelet options. There's an H-link option, which was what the watch was designed to have, and at some point during the prototyping, they checked out a flat link version, which also looks really good, so they decided to just give you the choice between the two, where you can pick which one you want. Now, the H-link version is still in the prototyping phase, and it's not finished yet. The links are very tight together, so it doesn't articulate very well. It kind of always maintains this roundish shape and won't lie flat. So Jody mentioned that they are going to try and improve that, but I'm not sure what the final product will look like. As it is now, it fits my 7.5-inch wrist very well. However, I did notice that it tugs on the hairs on my wrist, which I find really annoying. But that may be remedied when they loosen things up and improve the articulation, but I'm not sure. The flat link version is much more fluid and I think overall more comfortable, and it drops completely down from the lugs. So I think if you have a smaller wrist, they're recommending that you go with that one. Both feature solid links, solid end links, and screw pins for the adjusting. And they both have the same tool-free micro adjust clasp. I think that the H-link bracelet does look slightly better with this watch. I think it matches the curves of the watch a little bit better. And that makes sense because that's the one that they had in mind when they were designing this watch. But I think the flat link one also looks fine. I don't think it looks out of place with this design. So if you really want to maximize the comfort and the fluidity, I think it's fine to go with that one. The clasp is excellent. I love that they were able to include this tool-free micro adjust with the watch in this price range. This looks pretty much identical to the clasp that I've seen on some watches from Zelos, and I really fell in love with it on their watches. It makes it so much better to wear a watch with a bracelet, knowing that you can easily adjust the size on the fly without needing any tools. It allows you to compensate for fluctuations in wrist size or weather or different activities that you're doing. I often steer away from bracelets because of the difficulty in resizing them on the fly. So having a clasp like this makes a huge difference in the comfort and wearability of a watch on a bracelet. All right, now it's finally time for the dreaded moans and niggles section. Has Jody and his business partner created the perfect budget dive watch? Well, no, I don't think any watch can be called perfect. And if you're producing an automatic watch at a $300 price point, you can't have absolutely everything. That said, the problems that I have with this watch are very minor and I think completely understandable given the price point that they're asking. So let's run through them. I think the most noticeable thing for me is the case design and the finishing. It's smooth and comfortable. The dimensions are good. And I think overall it looks good, but it also looks a little bit unrefined to my eye. I think the lug tips are a little bit too wide and flat, and the crown could use a little bit of shaping. Overall, the silhouette is a little bit blocky and kind of looks like it's just sort of been cut out from the steel. There is a chamfer along the corner of the lugs, and overall the case has a nice swoop to it, but it does jump out at me as kind of the most unrefined aspect of the watch. And it's also the aspect that probably people look at the least. So when you consider the price range they're operating in here, I think this is a good case for the money. Also, this is a very minor one, but while the bezel is very smooth and pleasing to operate, it's also a little bit on the loud side. So if you're the kind of person who gets self-conscious adjusting your bezels in public, this might be a concern. And finally, this isn't a particularly original design for a watch. Again, the clear intention here is to give you the best bang for a watch in a watch that looks good and functions well. There's not a lot of bold design choices here. This one really is designed with mass appeal in mind, which is very understandable when you're trying to launch a brand. You need to get something out there that as many people are going to connect with as possible so that you can get the capital to start building the brand. And so while I think this is one of the best value affordable watches that I've ever seen, it also kind of leaves me wanting more and really makes me curious to see what Jody's got up his sleeve for his second watch. And I think this first offering will be very successful, so I think there are going to be other watches from Erebus in the future, and I can't wait to see what he's got coming next. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you for watching. Drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of the Erebus Origin. Posted a few pictures on Instagram, and a lot of you guys have already said that you've already pre-ordered it, so if you have, just let me know which color you got, and what other options you're leaning towards, whether you're going with that H-link bracelet or the flat link bracelet. I'm still trying to decide personally which color I'm going to get, so maybe help me out there as well. And if you want to help me out even more, you can drop by my website at justthewatch.com and pick up a t-shirt like this one, which I'm selling on my site. Anyways, that will wrap it up for today. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.